Okay, I'm starting the broadcast.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everybody, and thank you very much for joining our webinar today entitled Winning the Wireless Broadband Market. I'm Caroline Gabriel, I'm the Research Director at Maravedis-Rethink and your host today. Today we're going to share some of our latest research findings, and we're delighted to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Fumio Watanabe, who is the Chief Technology Officer of UQ Communications in Japan. UQ is renowned not only for deploying one of the world's first true 4G networks, but also for exploring groundbreaking business models on that network. As such, Maravedis-Rethink regards UQ as a trendsetter within the 4G operator community, as tracked in our MOSA, that's Mobile Operator Strategy Analysis Service, which examines the infrastructure rollouts of the top 100 4G carriers worldwide. More of that later, but we know that Dr. Watanabe will have some very interesting technology and commercial insights to share today. This is the agenda for the call today. As I said, we will share with you some key findings from our recent MOSA and RAN service research, including looking at what are the drivers for deploying a new type of network, what are the key elements of the HETnet in reality rather than theory, and some forecast highlights for different types of cells and base stations. Adeline Feller will then share with us some highlights from the MOSA service, and then we will go on, of course, to Dr. Watanabe's presentation about UQ. A couple of housekeeping slides before we start. Just a couple of notes on using the webinar interface, which should be in front of you. You can see there's a grab tab to open and close that panel, an audio pane where you can select your audio format. And most important, please don't forget to submit questions. You can do that at any time during the call for either of the speakers. Just type your question and click send, and we'll review and try and answer as many of those as we can during the Q&A session at the end. Before we get started, we'd just like to conduct a quick poll to look at the demographics of today's audience. Adeline, if we could do that now.
Thank you, Caroline. So if you please take a few seconds to answer the question to help us understand which part of the ecosystem you belong to, and we'll be sharing the results of the poll in a few seconds. Thank you. Let's wait for more answers to come in. And I'm now closing the poll, sharing the results. So we have 36% representing the carrier community, 45% their software or hardware vendors, 9% system integrators, and the rest analyst media. Thank you all for answering the poll.
Thank you. It's a great mix of audience there, and I guess we particularly hope we'll hear some comments and questions from the carriers who are listening in today. To get on to my presentation, I will now spend the next 10 minutes or so sharing a few highlights from the most recent findings from two of our key research services here at Maravedis-Rethink, MOSA, which I mentioned before, and a brand new report from our comprehensive RAN service, which examines the key technology trends and deployments in the wireless infrastructure market, and particularly the new face of the cellular network as it's going to look in the coming 5 years. Sorry, I didn't actually tell you. I'm going to tell you this now. We're often asked if you can obtain the slides. So just before I start, I'll answer this question. And the answer is yes, you will get an email after the event, and there'll be a link to download the slides. You can also watch a recorded webcast or circulate that to colleagues. And please visit our website if you need any more information. Sorry, I missed that off before. Anyway, on to the meat of the day. First of all, what is the challenge that operators are facing? And I know we'll hear a lot more about this from our guest speaker today. But just to summarize the key issues, which I suspect are very familiar to many of us, there are many graphs showing this kind of pattern, and this is just one taken from our own research and consensus sources. But basically they all show that mobile data traffic if we stick with conventional ways of planning and rolling out networks, will far surpass the ability to generate revenue from that traffic. Currently, data is 92% of 3G/4G network traffic, but only 18% of its revenue, and that traffic is growing, like 30-fold perhaps or more by 2020. And the more that operators deploy LTE, the more they drive that traffic up, as we've seen at carriers like Verizon, which is getting a huge percentage of its traffic on its LTE network, even from a relatively immature base. Video is a rising component of that traffic, and of course not only is high volume, but also has high quality of service requirements. Users' expectations of that are rising rapidly. This all adds up to a lot of additional network capacity required. But capacity, as operators are very aware, may not generate new revenues, which has to be extremely intelligently handled to deliver the customer experience that the subscribers want. If we stick with the conventional way of designing networks that has dominated in the 3G era, by 2018 we'll see an increase in mobile data traffic of around 27 times, but data revenue is stagnating and an ARPU decline because, of course, voice is falling away. Network upgrades in the simplest sense, upgrading the interface, adding some more sectors, will only deliver 40% of the capacity that we estimate is required to meet user demand. But the cost of data delivery comes down only marginally. The overall conclusion, a radical new approach to network design is required. And the research that we've done over the last few months looking at the top 100 carriers and their plans show that they're very aware of this and are starting to rise to the challenge and to come up with new thinking on how they will support their 4G networks. Small cells and HETNet are central to this. They can reduce the cost of delivering data. Most carriers are targeting a cost of delivery 50% lower at least by 2017, driven by new network architectures. There are many aspects, of course, to HETNet. It's not just about lowering the CapEx cost of hardware. Much more importantly, it's a greater reliance on intelligence in using those networks, so that each piece of resource is used to the maximum and nothing is wasted. And network resources can be allocated as they're required on a flexible, on-demand basis, something that has only recently become possible. Another important element is that carriers will not be able to have the luxury of focusing on just a couple of ideally situated mid-range frequency bands. As in the past, no single band will have sufficient capacity, and they will have to start using a whole combination of different spectrum, including unlicensed, and bands that have previously been considered very suboptimal, but can be harnessed, particularly the high-frequency bands, of course, can be harnessed more effectively by the new small cells that we'll see in the coming slides. And the graph just shows the very wide variety of ways that operators will increase their spectrum capacity. By 2018, auctions accounting for only about 17% of that, and the rest coming from refarming, from aggregation, from sharing spectrum, from all kinds of ways of using what they have more efficiently and adding Wi-Fi into the mix. What are the other key features of the new look RAN, according to the operators that we surveyed? There are many elements. It's not just about shrinking the cells and using different bands. Technologies like antennas, which have just been workhorses in the past and not really taken care of, become extremely important and very intelligent. So we can see what's typically being incorporated into the base stations that the LTE operators are deploying over the next coming years. Cloud RAN, which is much talked about, does remain a minority choice, but we believe it to be very important, very impactful for the carriers that do deploy it, and that's where really all the baseband processing and the intelligence of the network is virtualized on central servers or up in the cloud. And the actual cell site equipment becomes very basic, very shrunk down. Even the operators that don't go the full way towards Cloud RAN, which does require a huge amount of fiber, certainly with current technology, as we see at China Mobile. But we'll see most carriers adopting at least elements of that trend, shrinking the kit they have at the cell site and centralizing intelligence so that they can allocate resource where it's needed, rather than in a static way at each site. So we think 30% of LTE operators will be using elements of Cloud RAN by 2017, but far more mainstream RAN trend, of course, is towards the metro cell. Although Cloud RAN does involve a smaller kit at the cell sites themselves don't necessarily have to get smaller. The metro cell is specifically a highly integrated, miniaturized base station designed for a very small cell and to be deployed usually in zones. One of the important elements of that is whether Wi-Fi will be integrated right into the base station. Standards like Hotspot 2 are bringing Wi-Fi and cellular together, allowing them to be managed from a common core. But certainly in the early stages, Wi-Fi remains a separate network, largely for offload. And even as it becomes more integrated at a core and software level, we're not certain that carriers are convinced that they need to have integrated hardware. But however, 60% do expect to support a high level of integration of Wi-Fi with 3G and 4G by 2017 to 18. As I say, perhaps the doubtful aspect of that is whether it will be integrated right down to metro cell hardware level. But the most important change for the LTE operators is the extension of a trend that started in 3G of integrating the antenna and radio very tightly at the cell site, giving power efficiency, cost efficiency, and flexibility. So just to reinforce some of those points, this is the new base station, a very different picture to what we've been used to, although that's not to say that the traditional macro cell dies overnight. It continues to be deployed, and we even see some macro cell growth until the middle of the decade, mainly for rural expansion and for emerging markets. Even in those macro cells, though, the equipment itself is becoming very deconstructed with remote radio heads and Cloud RAN. And as early as 2014, the small cell becomes the most important element of new rollouts, overtaking, in terms of new deployment, overtaking the traditional base stations. So reinforcing that, a forecast here for small cell growth, and this is only public access small cells. They can be indoor, outdoor, but we don't include here the private access home or enterprise sensor cells, which of course are the huge volume in the small cell market currently. The public access small cells are much talked about, but they are a niche option until 2014, and the prices need to come down, and there needs to be a lot more confidence in standards so that cells from different vendors can interoperate smoothly, and also with Wi-Fi. So as we'll see, there are barriers in the way, but nevertheless there'll be an uptick from 2014, and shipments we believe will reach 3.37 million by 2018, up from just 125,000, with the value of the market, of course, not reflecting that, because prices will fall quite dramatically. And most of the value for the vendors and the integrators will be shifting to software, the amount of intelligence they can add to these cells, often putting more processing power at the cell site to do things like presence-based applications, improving quality of service because you know exactly where the user is and whether there are any problems with that particular cell. So it's that kind of intelligence that really makes the small cell of interest to carriers, not just the potential cost and capacity improvements. But as I say, there are big challenges here. The HetNet looks great on paper, but the idea of a network with multiple layers of cells of different sizes and different frequencies with Wi-Fi is a very logical way to address the capacity crunch and to lower cost of data delivery and to support new services. However, we hear a lot about some early deployments, many of those in very advanced mobile broadband countries, Japan, South Korea, but at this stage they're relying very heavily on customized equipment, expensive rollouts. Most operators don't have quite the urgent justification to be taking that kind of cost and risk. They want to see more combinations of frequency bands, carrier aggregation done in a very standard way, improvement of Wi-Fi integration with standards like Hotspot 2 coming to maturity. And many of them also need to acquire more fibre to make the system economically viable. So for this reason, we're cautious until certainly late 2014 about the sort of mass adoption of HETNet and small cells, but believe that from 2015, many of the obstacles will have been overcome to enable a lot of LTE carriers in developed markets to start kicking off their programs, particularly with the move to LTE Advanced. Some of the features enabled by the new releases of LTE do make it easier to roll out HETNets and small cells in a standardized and therefore a more cost-effective and interoperable way. That's a quick summary, which I hope gives a taste of some of the trends that that we're identifying in our research. As I say, it's the report that we've just published and the MOSA and RAN services have an enormous amount of complexity about operator plans and what 4G carriers are thinking about in the real world as opposed to just in theory. And of course we're happy to share more of that with you in a private way. But I hope that's given you a taste for that. Before handing over to Adelaine, I'd like to go on to our next poll. We've got a couple of polls where we would just like to get your views on topics that we believe to be relevant to the discussion today about making wireless broadband both technically and economically viable. So our next question is relating to what we've just been talking about. When do you expect public access small cells to become a mass market?
Thank you, Caroline. Please take a few seconds to answer the second poll, and we'll be sharing the results with the audience in a second here. We still have more responses coming in, and I will be closing the poll now. Can you see the answers?
Yes, that's interesting. Well, it seems that our audience is somewhat in line with our own forecasts and predictions, which is always encouraging. 41% believe that public access small cells will become a mass market in 2015, which is very much in line with what we believe. 22% more optimistic and think it's going to happen next year. None this year, which I think is unsurprising because equipment's very immature at this stage, and a further 22% think 2016 and 15% later than that. So quite a mix, but I think 2015 being seen as a turnaround year.
Thanks everyone for responding to the poll. So I'll just spend. Can you make me the presenter?
I have done, yes.
Okay, great. I'll just spend the next 5 minutes to present more details what the mobile operator strategy analysis service entails. So it's the only service that focuses on wireless infrastructure strategies, plans, and details for the top 100 4G operators. What the service includes in terms of coverage, we look at the macro RAN, small cells and carrier Wi-Fi, the backhaul, the core network, and from the analysis and interviews we conduct with operators like UQ, we produce SWOT analysis of those operators as well as ranking for the vendors, especially the RAN and backhaul vendors.
Adelaine?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think we can see your slides.
Let's see here. Let me make you the presenter, and then let's see if you can be presenter again. There you go.
No problem.
Can you see my screen now? I seem to have some trouble here with sharing my screen. So
If you make me presenter and I can show your slides.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, I have to close the poll here. Second. There you go. Okay, can you show your screen?
Yes, it's there.
Okay, take a few seconds here so you can see it yet. Still cannot see your screen. There you go. All right, so apologies for those technical difficulties. So as I was saying, then the MOSA coverage includes most of the parts of the network, focusing, of course, on the radio access side of things, and that includes, information on that's provided to us with interviews with senior management of the top 100 4G operators. Next slide, please. So in terms of deliverables, what we provide to clients are detailed infrastructure profiles in PDF. Those tend to be 5 to 10 pages long, where we detail their CapEx plans, their plans in terms of deployment of LTE features, the spectrum challenges, their RAN strategies, backhaul strategies, etc. And those come in PDF profile for the top 100 operators. Every quarter, we produce a quarter report that details the solution, the challenges faced by operators, the drivers that are driving their business, and then the solutions they're implementing, such as the ones that Caroline has talked about today. We also provide detailed hard data of the top 100 4G operators with a lot of details of both spectrum ownership and the CapEx plans coming from forecast of subscribers, working our way to the number of sites they have, and then determining CapEx plans of both micro, metro cells, and the different flavors of the RAN. Next slide, please. So the structure of MOSA is simple. We look at drivers and challenges and analyze the solutions around 10 key trends that we identified have an impact on the 4G business case, and they're listed here on the slide. Our objective is, again, to look at the wireless infrastructure primarily, although we also touch some business issues and spectrum issues. But we have identified operator champions for each of the key categories here and look in very much detail their implementation plans. Next slide, please. I was mentioning working our way to determining in detail CapEx. So we look at subscriber forecast, both coming from operators' interviews and other sources. We have a number of set of assumptions, including cell loading, and then we produce also a very unique spreadsheet of number of cell sites for each operators by spectrum band, by different modes and technologies, and work our way to determine CapEx estimates, not only for the RAN but also for the backhaul. So that kind of summarizes the MOSA service. For those interested in more details, I'd be happy to provide a live demo on a one-on-one. And that concludes my part. So now we would give you control, Mr. Watanabe, to start your presentation.
Great. And while we're handing over, we'd just like to carry out our final poll of the day. We mentioned earlier that we believe that the high-frequency spectrum bands that have been unsuitable for 3G so far will come into their own for small cells. And we're wondering what the audience believes the 3.5 gigahertz band, which is being pushed quite heavily in the US in particular, will be most useful for over the next 5 years. We can ask you to vote on that one.
Yeah. Let's take a few more seconds here as to have responses coming in. To have people voting here, so let me go ahead and close the poll and share the results with you.
Great, there's quite a decisive majority, I think, there that believes they will mainly be used for access services and with the TD-LTE technology. And a sort of second place for small cell backhaul, 57% for TD access and 27% for non-line of sight small cell backhaul. So interesting, quite conclusive results there, I'd say, and it will be interesting to see, since Dr. Watanabe is obviously using TDD spectrum, what his thoughts may be on harnessing some of these higher bands. So with that, I'm very happy to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Fumio Watanabe, CTO of UQ Communications, to address the topic of winning the wireless broadband market. Welcome, Dr. Watanabe, and we can see your screen.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Fumio Watanabe of UQ Communications. I take about 25 minutes to explain the technical and business strategy of UQ Communications.
Will you speak up a little bit louder, please? We have trouble hearing you. Thank you.
Okay, just a moment. How about this? It's okay?
Getting better.
Better?
Yes.
Okay. I little bit explain that what is UQ Communications. UQ is a nationwide 4G operator in Japan using WiMAX as a technology, having a 30 MHz bandwidth on 2.5 GHz spectrum. We are the very small company having only 300 employees, and we just established that 5 years ago, and we have started our commercial service at July 2009. Okay, what is the challenge of the use case? As you know, that Japan is quite highly matured market. Also almost a saturated market, and there's a huge tier 1 mobile operator, NTT Docomo, KDDI, SoftBank. And also that there's a lot of the broadband services, like the LTE-A and the CTO. We have more than the 75% penetration rate of the broadband services in Japan. And the UQ got the 2.5 GHz spectrum. Some people believe that it is a little bit higher spectrum for mobile services. So some people say that it is possible to make it a good business or not. But as a result, that February this year, we got 4 million customers. That means that after the launch of the commercial services, 3.5 years, we got 4 million customers, and we become the profitable businesses. And in fact, that our net income is about $1 billion US dollars. That means that 300 people company getting the $1 billion US dollars is quite an efficient company. We are the mobile operator, but we are not telephony voice service providers. we are just a smart pipe service providers. Many of the tier 1 operators hate the pipe services, but UQ try to be a smart pipe providers. We never providing that upper layer services, voice, no mail, no music services, no commerce services. It's just quite simple internet gateway service only. In fact, that as I mentioned, that we got 4 million customers. During this 1 year, we got about 2 million customers. All those are the so-called broadband market customers. Mainly come from the mobile Wi-Fi routers, and also the WiMAX and the smart home market. And we got very good support from the customers. And in fact, that last year and the year 2011, that we got the number 1 support all of the customer satisfaction from various kind of award. Okay. What is the key factors for small companies, small operators, make a successful business? I pick up the 3 points. One is the business model. The most important key point is that we never try to provide the cellular business, legacy cellular business, or cellular telephony services, or cell phone services. We just focusing the mobile internet services. That means that we are quite open for the network and the devices. We never to be closed like the tier 1 operators. We went out to the various kind of the MVNOs. And second point is that we focus that high performance data services. So my design of the coverage is slightly different to the cellular design to keep the highest performance of the user circuit. This is just optimized for the highest speed data, not considering the voice services. The third point is of course, the important point in the low cost operations. We developed the very small, all-in-one type small base stations for the sector base station and the omni station, which is only about 20 liter and 20 kilograms per sector with the RRH and PDUs. And also we mainly use the Metro Ethernet as a backhaul, and also we use the FTTH. Okay, this is how we expand the coverage of our services. We now have about 21,000 outdoor macro base stations. It does not include the indoor or the small pico base stations. Now we are covering about 94% of the nationwide population coverage, and covering more than 100 cities, 1,000 cities in the nationwide. But the point is not the number of the base stations. This is an example of the location of our base station in Tokyo. This graph shows that about 70 kilometer and the 45 kilometer areas. You can see that the solo of the base station. That point is that in the cellular design case, in order to provide the telephony services, the coverage area size is the most important or first priority. Therefore, that many operators prefer to use a lower frequency band like the 800 or 900. That, as I mentioned, that our business is focusing on the internet traffic. This is a totally different to the voice world. We carefully checking that the traffic pattern of each areas, and then if there's a lot of the internet data traffic, we push many base stations. So in Tokyo area, for example, this is a highly dense area. We have a lot of the base stations. But in rural areas, we do not have the base station. In the sense that 2.5 gigahertz band is very good to have a highly densely, to cope with the highly density demand. And this is the devices that almost all the devices are the retail devices. And it means that there's no UQ brand devices. Those devices are the manufacturer brand devices. And there are a lot of Wi-Fi routers, pocket Wi-Fi routers, and wireless embedded notebook PC, and tablet, and book reader. And also that we have several smartphones. Of course, this is not a UQ's devices. This is one of the MVNO, that is the KDDI, providing the several kind of the wireless embedded the smartphones, and also the tablet. Those are the dual mode devices, WiMAX/3G. Like that some of the MVNO have their own devices. And one of the book reader company providing their own book reader embedded WiMAX. Like that our device is quite open and flexible. And another important point is that our open policy for the network. In fact, that we have now the more than 60 MVNOs from various business fields. One is the national retailer. We have a big 3 national retailer as our MVNOs, and ISPs. In Japan, that there are 3 big ISPs: Nifty, Big-O, and Sonnet. They are our MVNOs. Since they have those ISP have their own customers for their ISP services, and they want to expand their services to using the mobile data network. Therefore, they want to be MVNOs to provide their own mobile data service, and then they use our network. And telecom carriers and other the MVNOs. Those are quite unique. And for example, the one typical case is that the vending machine only MVNO. It's providing the vending machine only, but he's at the MVNO. Like that, we welcome to the many different style of the business field to be MVNOs. Not that we provide various type of the connection for MVNOs. The very simple case to the complex case that we provide several kind of the style of the connection, which allow to chance to the many different companies be MVNOs. As a result, that among the 4 million customers, our UQ direct customer is only 10%. Other 90% are that come from the MVNOs. Our network is that also applied to the backhaul as a Wi-Fi network. And this is the case of the KDDI Wi-Fi public services. KDDI now have more than 200,000 Wi-Fi hotspots. About 60% of those Wi-Fi APs are connected to the WiMAX as a backhaul. And also the in-train service or in the bus services becomes very popular in Japan. In many cases, that WiMAX are used for the backhaul. And also that machine-to-machine world becomes popular. And one typical example is that the digital signage. You can see that many big screens in the station. It's supported by our network as the connection for the net. Another example is that the vending machine having the network connections, and the karaoke machine, and also that the smart meter becomes popular. Okay, let's move to the cost issues. As I mentioned, that one of the key success points of the UQ business is the low cost operations. This view graph shows that our estimated cost per users of the UQs. The UQ's case is that the network operation costs of the year 2011 and 12 are all the same, even that the number of the customer increased double. That means that the per user cost is that becomes about half during those 1 year. You can find that another example of the operator A and B. These are the network operation cost per subscriber of the large-scale cellular operators. Of course, this is estimated by UQ, using the public announced data. Even they have that big subscribers, number of subscribers, per cost, operation cost, per subscriber cost is still expensive. And the most important point to provide the high-speed data service is the cost per gigabit. This is also estimated by UQ. If the UQ's cost per gigabit assumed to be 1 for year 2011, our cost per bit becoming lower last years. And if we compare to the one large-scale cellular operator's cost of 3G case, it is probably about 14. And even the case of the 3G plus 4G cost of gigabit, it will be probably about level of the 6. This is of course a rough number, but you can understand that about 1/10 of the 3G cellular operators, UQ's gigabit per cost is very cheap. It is the background of our success story. Why we can beat lower level is that, as I mentioned, that we do not have any upper layer services. We have only the 300 people, and we just focusing the internet gateway services. And also that our network design with the location of the site is optimally designed for the high-speed data demand, as I mentioned. Considering those factors, our network capacity is huge compared to the other operators' network. We can handle the huge traffic. Okay. Yeah, this is the backhaul. We mainly use that wide area Ethernet. In addition to that, we can use the FTTH and CATV as a backhaul for the picocell or microcells. As a next step that we have to face the problem of the backhaul. We at the moment that we now mainly use the 100 mega ether, but capacity increase step by step. For example, that introducing the 4x4 MIMO or multiband, multimode, and then that we need the gigabit ether. But in addition to that, we will move to the cloud run type of the architecture in near futures. Since that we have to take care of the dense areas, dense traffic areas, which means that the small cell on the small cell density located in the urban areas is the most important. In that case, that the cloud run is one of the suitable architectures. Therefore, that we need the dark fiber or WDM or PON technologies for the supporting the front haul to the cloud runs. This is the next issue, how to expand our network capabilities. Okay, that's using the next two slides that I would like to conclude. UQ's challenge is to fight with huge cellular businesses and huge cellular operators. In fact, that the UQ is quite small, but and also that we have no upper layer services. That, as I mentioned, that we are quite efficient. 300 people get the $1 billion US income. This is the structure of the cell phone versus internet searches. We are making our business supported by the internet communities. This is slightly different to the cellular businesses, but we can successfully make a business. Okay, what is next? As I mentioned, that the UQ service is the pipe. So, what's the next of the smart pipe? This is that we are now thinking about that we need much more smarter pipe services. That means that even we will have only one physical network, I will slice the several logical networks independent to work to each other. And each slice will be optimized for one MVNO application service providers, and one slice may be optimized for the one application, or even for the one users. We can slice that arbitrarily from technical viewpoint. This kind of software-defined network architecture will be very suitable for to provide the smarter pipe and to expand our services. Okay, I hope that the people understand that how differentiate all the cellular businesses and that making that the high-speed internet services even in the highly mature Japanese market. Thanks for that kind of thing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Watanabe. It was extremely interesting and some real insights on a very innovative business model, I think, that you have in Japan. We have quite a few questions and about, well, nearly 10 minutes time so I hope we'll be able to answer a few. A lot of them are on a similar theme, so I'll summarize them all together. And that is you're unusual in being sticking with the WiMAX platform for now when some carriers are migrating to TDD LTE. Do you believe that the WiMAX platform will remain sustainable, particularly in terms of your access to a choice of devices at affordable cost?
Mm-hmm. Okay. The WiMAX is WiMAX over the TD-LTE that it's of course important for the business. However, that the most important point is that the business models for the to provide the internet industries. On that sense, that we can use any radio transmission technologies. And WiMAX, at this moment, that the WiMAX is I believe the best suited for this business. But in the future, that it is quite open for the radio transmission technology. In fact, that the WiMAX forum already defined that the WiMAX 2.1 dBs, it is compatible to the TD-LTEs. So if the UQ gets that additional spectrum, that we will expand our network and our technology.
Great. And what band of spectrum would you hope to be able to acquire?
In Japan, that Japanese government already issued that evaluation method to select the licensee for the additional spectrum in 2.6 gigahertz band. That is at 2625 to 2650. There's at 25 megahertz bandwidth. It will be just above to UQ's band, and then it will be assigned for some operators. Probably that the July or August timing. Of course, the UQ tried to get that spectrum, but I can say that UQ get it or not. We try to do it. Yes.
Sure. Yes, appreciate that. If you acquire the spectrum you need, how quickly would you be able to move to WiMAX 2, and are vendors ready to support that?
Frankly speaking, that we have we very quickly that launch that to use that in the spectrum very quickly.
Yes.
Since that you can have the 30 mega spectrum, but we now handling the huge traffic. It is almost comparable to the volume, total volume of the tier 1 operators' data traffic. Even we have a small number of the subscribers. We are handling that almost the same level of the traffic. That means that we face the shortage of the spectrum.
Sure, sure. Great. A different subject, but a lot of the audience are interested in the machine-to-machine aspect of the business model, and wondering how many smart meters you support, and more generally, will there be an expansion of the business model towards Internet of Things?
Yeah, potentially that there are about 70 million meters in Japan, and probably that using about 10 years, those old meters will be replaced by smart meters. And yeah, depending on the regional power companies, that the schedule is different. But in Kyushu areas, Kyushu Power Electric Company have already announced that he will use that WiMAX as a baseline for the smart meter deployment. And the biggest area is that the Tokyo Power Electric Company, TEPCO. TEPCO is now under the evaluation of the proposal from the several providers concerning the smart meter network. And in the April, that they TEPCO will have to decide that the decision, but today we do not have received that answer. But anyway, that there's about 27 million meters in TEPCO areas. But I'm not sure that how many percentage of those meters will use on the WiMAX and LTE or 3G or the dedicated dedicated wireless technology. That will come soon for the TEPCO answers. Conclusion will come soon next month, I believe.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting. A final question. I think we could go on all day, but I think we'll have time for one more, which is again returning to the topic of small cells. Mm-hmm. In general, do you expect to expand your network around small cells going forward? And at the moment, someone's wondering what percentage of your small cells have Gigabit Ethernet interfaces as opposed to Cloud RAN?
Concerning the Cloud RAN, that we have not yet decided. But I believe that in the urban areas, having a highly dense traffic demand, the Cloud RAN is very suited architecture. At this moment, that we have a lot of small picocell or street cell or type of the base station in the urban areas in order to handle the heavy traffic. And so that means that that type of the deployment is slightly different to the cellular voice services. We concentrate our investment for considering the density of the data traffic. That means that we need really we need small base stations.
Yes, no, I understand. Great. Thank you so much. As I say, there are more questions, and I would encourage people in the audience, if your question wasn't addressed, do get in touch with us, and we'll try to help. But I hope we've covered a good range of topics there. It just remains for me to thank you all for attending today, and I hope you found it very valuable. All the contact details on the website are available, so please do contact us with any feedback or further questions, information about the research product. A link to the slides will be sent out to you in the next couple of days. And most importantly, I would like to thank very much Dr. Watanabe for sharing so many interesting insights on UQ Communications, and say thank you and goodbye for now.
Thank you very much, everyone. And just a reminder, our next webinar would be with Everything Everywhere from the UK on May 14. We'll be discussing very specifically small cell and backhaul deployment strategies. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, bye.